Hi everybody, welcome back to C.HR with Ariaunstewart. Today we have Lara Gonzalez Rodriguez with us today. Awesome, and she is the COO of C.HR. So it's really awesome to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here.
And talk about all of the stuff we've been doing and also what you've been doing independently to build your brand as well. So if you just want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Lara Gonzalez Rodriguez, and I, as Ariane said, I am the COO of C.HR. Previously, I was working in the cannabis industry in operations at a local dispensary, and before that, I was working in warehousing in operations as well.
Awesome. So I do want to talk about first go back a little bit to like your childhood and how you started.
Oh my God.
Because you have a wealth of cannabis knowledge, which is awesome, right? Because it's a growing industry. It's growing tremendously in the city of Springfield alone, let alone like across the country. But I want to talk about your childhood, how you started, and what was it like when you eventually like got into the cannabis industry.
All right. So, I mean, my childhood, I was actually born in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. So I came here when I was 5. My first language is Spanish. And I grew up in a very Christian household, so, you know, just say no to drugs and, you know, growing up thinking and being taught that weed was a gateway drug. But I actually started using in high school. I had one bad experience with weed where I got, I had a panic attack because I just didn't have the knowledge back then, right? On how to properly dosage out, the proper ways to use it. So I was just smoking based off of how my boyfriend at the time was smoking, which was an excessive amount. So I had a panic attack. And that day I literally decided, I'm like, no, cannabis is awful. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And then I called these the dark days. Because I legitimately I stopped using cannabis for over a decade. I had severe depression, and I was struggling with mental health and severe depression, PTSD, anxiety, things I didn't even know that I had.
Yeah.
And I call them dark days because when I decided to start using cannabis again, I saw my mental health, you know, get better. So I after all these years of like, you know, basically being like, no, cannabis is bad, I was at my wit's end. I was working at a warehouse as an operations and logistics supervisor, where I was incredibly depressed. The hours were not allowing me to spend time with my family, with my nieces who were growing up. I couldn't take family trips anymore. And one day I stumbled upon this video, you know, after weed became legal again. I think this was maybe like 6 months after cannabis became legal again. Or again. Well, yeah, again. Because, we did have a prohibition for a long time.
Yeah.
So I stumbled on this video about this little girl named Charlotte Figge who had Dravet syndrome. And she was going through about 100 grand mal seizures a day or something like that. Something ridiculous, where this little girl could not just live her life,
function at all,
right? And she was very young, right? So her parents were at their wits' end. They were living in a state where cannabis was illegal, and they found out about something called CBD, which is within the family. It's within the cannabidiol family, and it's basically kind of like weed's like cousin, I guess you can say. And I'm watching this, you know, little documentary about it, and all of a sudden she gets better. She stops having these grand mal seizures. She can live her life just from CBD. And immediately my brain like lit up, and I was just like, hold on. I'm like, this is a neurological disorder.
Right.
And if cannabis can help this little girl with this kind of neurological disorder, what could it possibly do with mine? So then I literally just jumped into research, because I'm the type of person where before I do anything, I research it. And my parents were in Puerto Rico at the time. And I called my mom up after doing weeks of research and being like, nope, this is the path I'm taking. I'm miserable. My mental health is taking a hit. I'm at my lowest point. And I called my parents up and I was like, all right, mommy, papi, I wanted to call you and let you know that like when you get back, your daughter's going to be smoking cannabis. And immediately my mom, ay, no, like, no. Hold up. I'm like, here's the research. Here's what I found. I am an adult. Like, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And, you know, they were worried. They would call me every day. And then they came back home to a completely different Lara within the span of a week.
Wow.
And so I literally had to teach myself how to dosage out properly during this time so that I wouldn't have to have an anxiety attack anymore. So I literally started smoking at night. Until I felt like I was comfortable enough to smoke during the day on the weekends, because I was like, I can't go into a warehouse.
You have to kind of learn how you are.
Yeah, exactly. So it took me about 2 or 3 months before I was like, all right, I feel like I've built up a decent enough tolerance where I can, you know, interact with people while I'm high, or, you know, go about my business while I'm high. And it wasn't just the mental health aspect of it. I was literally losing weight at such a rapid rate because of the cannabis as well.
Okay.
Yeah, which most people are like, how? Don't you get the munchies?
Right. So they give you more energy, like, throughout your day and stuff.
I had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Like, I would be smoking, and all of a sudden I'd be like, let me take my dogs on a short walk. And that short, like, 30-minute walk would turn into a 3-hour walk through my neighborhood, you know? So
I think that's interesting, and I want to talk a little bit more about just living life as a cannabis user, because now we have recreational cannabis stores popping up in the area, so you're seeing people, you know, kind of go at all times of the day, which means they're probably functioning off of, you know, using it throughout their days and stuff. So and you've also been an operational manager and stuff. How do you feel about cannabis when it comes to, like, the work environment?
So within the cannabis industry, we're definitely not supposed to, like, promote cannabis use, like,
while working,
which honestly I find absolutely preposterous, right? Because we are literally within this industry selling this plant as a medicine for people and telling them that they can get their lives back with cannabis. Right. But then within the workforce,
which is the majority of your day in life.
Precisely. Within the workforce, they discourage cannabis use. Yeah. They discourage the employees using cannabis. And I'm someone who literally functions on cannabis. Right? Go ahead.
And I was going to say, I think that's it, because I guess I get it in a way, because you don't know how much, or if, like you're saying, you had a moment where when you were first using it where you had panic attacks from it, and if you're, you know, working with people who might not know how to properly dosage themselves, but that's an educational
Precisely. So for me, I literally had to educate myself. Yeah. And not just that, like, I took it upon myself to meet people within the industry. My first friend in the industry, who I absolutely adore, Seth Frappier, owner of Chronic Trips, where he mixes health and wellness with cannabis, a cannabis lifestyle, right? So he was really the one who taught me, or showed me that, like, hey, like, you're not the only one who's functioning because of cannabis, right? Right. So then I leave the warehousing job eventually, and I start working at a local dispensary. And that was, you know, you walk into it and people think it's so cool to work in the cannabis industry, right? They're like, oh, it's the best, it's so cool, you get to work with stoners. But it's a corporate business just like anywhere else. So I would go in and I'm not even going to lie, would I smoke before work? Yes, because like I could tackle the highest freaking mountain on cannabis.
I feel like a lot of people in the industry do, and it's always just a thing of like, I don't know, I feel like it's like, as long as you're not caught like in the parking lot.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had one employee that I came in, like, and he opened his car door and just smoke came out. And I'm like, I was like, my dude, gosh. You live in Holyoke. Right. Like, how did you get so much smoke in your car? Right?
In your 10-minute car
But
ride.
here's the deal. I felt like who am I to be like, yo, my dude, like, this is not okay, you're high at work, when we are literally selling this product, telling people smoke throughout your day.
It's really it really doesn't make sense, really contradictory.
It
when
is.
You think about it.
Right, because a lot of the employees that are coming into the cannabis industry, especially at a dispensary level, are typically medical users. Yeah. Right? And my stance is that cannabis is medicinal and it does not matter. It does not matter if you're buying it medicinally or recreationally, because it's going to have benefits.
I got another question for you, because this always keeps coming up. So how do you feel about, because what you're saying, there's the recreational and then there's the medicinal. And I've talked to various, like, you know, cannabis company owners and stuff, and they're always like, it's the same thing. Like,
it is. We're just not allowed to say it.
And a lot of people, like anybody who's going in and buying it recreationally, is kind of still like self-medicating in a way.
Precisely. So I remember having a conversation with a coworker about this, because my stance from the get is this is all medicinal.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I purchase recreationally? Yes, I do. But because I don't have a medical card. Right. And that's by choice, like, because I can just get it.
And they make it so easy to get the medical cards too, which I feel like...
Not in my opinion. Okay. Because at the beginning of the program, or when medical started first here, to get a medical card, and think about the demographic of people who need medical cannabis, right? Yeah. It is people with disabilities, whether it's mental disabilities, whether it's physical disabilities, people who might be disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, people who might not necessarily be able to afford this. So just to get your medical card in the beginning, it was... You had to pay the state, I think it was about $250. Oh, wow. And then you had to pay a doctor because your health insurance would not cover it.
Right, okay.
So you're looking at anywhere between $450 to $500 just to get your medical card.
Yeah. No, you're right. That is a barrier to entry for sure.
So, but regardless of this, my stance is, so I was speaking with my coworker, and I was telling her my stance, where I'm like, yo, this is all medicinal. I know that we have to, you know, per regulations, we have to separate the two. I'm like, but it's all medical. And she's like, well, you know, I mean, I don't agree, because what about, you know, that rich guy at the, who's at the, what do you call it, the golfing course or whatever that's called, the greens. Yeah. And, you know, they're just taking a few hits because, you know, they think it's cool. I'm like, okay. I'm like, they might be taking it with the intentions of it being a recreational. Yeah. But there's no denying the benefits that we get from smoking cannabis. Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you're like, nah, I just do it because I like the high. Like, you're still benefiting from the anti-inflammatory properties. You know, from the healing properties that cannabis has, from, you know, the ability to help you with whatever mental anguish that you're going through, because for someone like me who lives with high anxiety, it is very difficult for me to compartmentalize my thoughts and my problems and try to figure it out. And the moment I started smoking cannabis, I was able to organize everything and figure things out in ways that I couldn't before.
And I do want to talk about, because you know a lot about the CCC too, the Cannabis Control Commission.
I know a bit.
You know a lot. You know,
I know more.
Not a lot of people that you're meeting on a like day-to-day basis know really anything about it, unless they're like really diving deep, trying to open up their own company or do, you know what I mean? So I do want to talk about that a little bit too in some of the programs, for those who are watching the show who are interested in maybe like getting into the industry. Right. So there's the economic and empowerment
and social equity program.
Social equity.
So economic empowerment was literally just for that first round.
Right.
And then they stopped the program.
Let's talk about how that really went down too, though.
Yo. So I can't say that I know a lot about why that program was opened up for a small window, but I can speak about like how, as a person of color from this community, not knowing about this program, not knowing about the benefits from this program, and that it would be open to someone like me, you know, and then not having the ability to sign up for the program. Right. It sucked.
Because, so economic empowerment really wants to help people in certain geographical areas, right?
They want to help, the program, the economic empowerment and social equity program were literally created to help people who are disproportionately affected by the war on drugs to get into the industry.
Right.
Right, so people who have either a close immediate family member or who themselves were arrested for a nonviolent drug offense, or people who live in a specific geographical location where you have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. But there are stipulations to that as well, like the fact that because of my zip code, even though I grew up in Massachusetts, straight from, I came off a plane to Massachusetts.
Right.
And this is where I've been living in Springfield since I was 5 years old. And because of my zip code, I technically do not qualify for social equity.
And that's what's interesting to me about a lot of different things. So that program, certain grants and stuff, they'll break up the city into certain pockets.
Here's the kicker though, they will break up certain cities.
Right.
So a city like Springfield is broken up so that my zip code, which I'm not going to say what it is, but if you go down 2 numbers from my zip code, they qualify.
Right.
But a city like Amherst,
right, fully qualifies for the entire
I think I'm almost certain, if I could be wrong, if someone's listening, they're like, yo, this girl's wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But most of Amherst does qualify. If not all of it, which again is wholly preposterous to me.
Which is very strange to me too, because it's mainly a college town too.
Right. So I wonder if it's just because of how small Amherst is comparatively speaking to Springfield. However, if we look at the demographic of Springfield, we're the demographic who has
volume.
Right. So this program was created to supposedly assist with all of this. But on top of it, we have very few social equity and economic empowerment dispensaries that have their doors open.
Yeah.
And as far as I am aware, no cultivation facilities.
Right. And I don't, and I'm not trying to shed light on this to make it seem like it's all bad. I think a big part of it is knowing, first of all, right? So that you can do research on the economic empowerment program, that you can do research on social equity. And these are programs that I'm sure are going to be in different states.
I know that I think Connecticut is trying to implement something like social equity as well. What I'm hoping is that other states will learn from previous states' mistakes. However, is that happening currently? No.
Right. But we need to get ahead of it. We need to be knowledgeable. We need to be at these meetings. I mean, the CCC has a board just like every other major.
More than anything, not just about doing our research, is bringing light to all of this, because like you said, compared to other people you've spoken to, I know a lot. Yeah. Right? Based off of your day-to-day interactions. And there are people who know way more than I do. But my question is, how often are we trying to bring attention to these things? Right. How often are we actually speaking up about it? Because, the motto, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Yeah. But also the people running the show might not know how broken it is. Right.
Yep. And I do want to talk about too, because for all of you interested in all this cannabis knowledge, it's going to continue on your podcast. So why don't you talk about your podcast a little bit?
So my podcast is called Green Behind the Ears, and I'm hoping to have it drop by December. And I'm starting this podcast for this specific reason, because I know that there are a lot of you out there who want to make it into the cannabis industry, want to get in, but feel like your only avenues are through dispensaries or cultivation facilities. And my goal
is very daunting.
It is. And they're getting, you work at one, they're getting thousands of applications a day. When I was managing the trim and production room, I was going through hundreds of applications a day, trying to find the right people. And it's just, everyone wants to get in, but I want to show that there are different ways to get into the industry, as well as bring experts onto the show who can shed light on what it is that they do, and maybe even give you guys a jumping off point as to where to look into, whether it's the science behind it, whether it's growing, whether it's entrepreneurship, all those kinds of things. Because there is such a lack of education within the cannabis industry, as well as like something as simple as how to dosage it out properly.
Right.
I've had people who I know in my personal life who have sought me out because they want to smoke cannabis, but they don't know how.
They don't want to have a scary experience.
Precisely.
Or use the wrong thing for them. Yeah.
I know that one of the managers at the dispensary that I worked at didn't know how to use a bowl, and it was someone who is not even interested in smoking cannabis. So I literally broke down how he's supposed to hold this particular bowl, what the carb filter is, how to take your first hit, and if you don't want to take too big of a hit, don't take your finger off the carb. And those are things that if you're just coming into cannabis, you do not know. And my thing is, cannabis can, if you don't know how to use it, you can have a bad experience.
Right.
And then that ruins it for you.
Yeah. And I love that you're bringing it into, like, because you're a working professional, you're a cannabis user, you're someone who's creative, you've had experiences with people who are also other experts in the industry, and I love that you're bringing that all together for your podcast.
Yeah, and it's more so because I'm just like, you know what, I was lucky. I was able to tell my parents that I needed to take a break from my job because I was absolutely just depressed. I became suicidal at one point because I was working 15 hours a day, you know? So I was lucky enough that my parents were like, you know, you can stay with us, you know, take your time. And when I told them that I wanted to focus on cannabis, they were supportive. So I was...
Which is awesome.
Right.
Especially with that initial reaction.
Right, no, I know.
That's awesome that they came around.
Oh my God, they're not users, but I've gotten them to try it, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh my God, yeah, my mom was hilarious. Also, trying to explain to someone how to inhale when they've never inhaled before. Because, like, I've noticed that people, when they first start smoking, they just keep it in their mouth. I'm like, no, boo-boo.
That's funny.
So I had this immense privilege, and I have to acknowledge that it was a privilege because so many from our community cannot take time off like that.
Right.
You know,
even center themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So I literally took these first four formative years of my, you know, my time in the cannabis industry, literally just networking. And my favorite thing to do was literally sit down with my friends, you know, sit down with the experts that they would introduce me to, and literally just smoke blunts for hours and talk about politics, talk about the CCC, talk about their expertise and what they know. And I was just like, how do I bring my community along with me on this journey? Yes. So that's why I'm starting this. And I'm so immensely lucky that I have so much support from those in this community who are like, oh my God, yeah, let's do this, you know?
Yeah, and they're ready to hear more.
Yes.
That's awesome. And I do, real quick, just something that was really interesting that you were telling me about the experience of smoking too is also that it is greatly impacted by the flavor and the taste.
Ooh,
so you want to talk about that?
I do. Okay, so one part of, do I want to call it miseducation or lack of education? I will call it a lack of education within the cannabis sphere, and you know, new consumers is that, and I don't know enough about this, and I'm not going to pretend like I do, but I still find it fascinating, is the Entourage Effect. Right? So we have been basically taught to only focus on the percentage of THC, right? Because that we can control. However, what we can't necessarily control is the terpene profile that we might get from a plant, right? So the Entourage Effect is literally how cannabis affects us in ways with not just the THC, but the terpene profile, which is the scent and flavor profile. Like each part of the cannabis, there's a reason why when we purchase cannabis, we want to inherently look at it, we want to feel it, we want to smell it, right? And just the terpenes can affect what kind of mood you get from the actual plant. So my favorite, or my second favorite, which a lot of people don't necessarily like because it's a sativa, is Super Silver Lemon Haze. When it is grown properly, it smells straight up like lemon rinds. It's so fragrant, it's so wonderful. And because of I think the terpene, it's called citrine, I think it is.
Okay.
It's a citrus terpene.
Yep.
That gives you a lot of energy. And when I started smoking, what I was doing is I was smoking a lot of sativas because that's what I needed. I needed that boost.
Yeah.
And actually, my friend Seth and I decided to hike up Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire, which the highest point I had hiked by that point was Mount Tom.
Oh, okay.
And that was a full day hike. It took about 8 hours, to get up and back. And the only reason why I made it that far was because we would stop and have our little smoke breaks. I had my
give you your energy.
Yeah, my sativa. So one thing that I noticed was over the pandemic was I had a few friends who actually got COVID. And I had one who got COVID. And I would check in with him and be like, hey, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And he's like, this sucks. This is awful. But the worst part is I'm smoking and I'm not getting high. And I was like, hold on, what? He goes, yeah, I'm smoking and I'm not getting high. And I was like, well, I know that when I'm sick, my high feels differently.
So you were like, is that what you mean? Or
right. And he was like, no. He's like, I mean, it feels different, but I'm not getting high. And I was like, hold on. I'm like, did you lose your sense of taste and smell? And he's like, yes, I did. And I was like, that is it. I didn't even know what the Entourage Effect was by this point.
That's really crazy.
But I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, you're not getting the terpene profiles.
Right.
So when you go into a dispensary, my suggestion is don't just look at the THC content. Don't look at the percentage. Do your research. Look into what the Entourage Effect is and what you should be looking for.
Specifically.
Yes.
Because they do. I mean, they should have all of that information
They
ready for you. They should be able to talk you through it. So once you figure out what Entourage pretty much works best for you, you should be able to go in and get something that works for you.
Right. So one thing that I'm realizing within the industry, unfortunately, is a lot of just doing your own research, which is one thing that I have to openly say I don't like about the industry, because this is something so new to people, and the highest demographic or age range for new cannabis users are pretty much like the boomers, like 54 and up. If you're 54 and you're not a boomer, I'm sorry, but don't
call me a boomer.
Right. So let me backtrack that. It's more so, the age ranges of 54 and up. The working professionals, people who are retiring, people who were smoking weed in the 70s and were so happy with their brick weed, who might not necessarily understand all of these little things. And I feel like it is up to the cannabis industry to educate the public.
I agree.
We are the experts.
I agree.
We are the ones who are working day in and day out with this. And it would be so simple for us to just sit down and be like, you know what, let's teach some classes to this community.
And let's have these conferences and let's be more informative in our actual dispensaries and make sure everybody who's on the sales floor is an expert. Those all play a part.
Precisely. But I also have to admit that maybe there's a reason why they're not doing it, because if they're pushing the notion that the THC percentage is what's valuable, then why are they going to push this this whole Entourage Effect, and being like, hey, focus on the terpenes. Look at the percentage of the terpenes when we get our, our lab results back and that kind of stuff.
Because it almost kind of makes it more complicated for them. I mean, people who are cultivators know all of this. They have all this information. They're thinking about it as they're creating their products and growing the product. But to give that information for the audience to then speculate can be kind of another daunting thing for the industry.
Yes.
But that's why we're here.
Yeah. But actually, to go back to the social equity and economic empowerment, because we didn't get too far into that. So the benefits. So I did already establish that economic empowerment is no must. You can't apply for it anymore, unfortunately. And it did have quite a few more benefits than the social equity program has, right? But it is still worth applying for social equity, because if you do get that, they give you classes, different kinds of classes on cultivation, on taxes within the industry, entrepreneurial classes, so many different aspects within the cannabis industry that if you do not have this, if you do not know that these are options, you're not going to go for it. Right. They even, I think we saw that they even give classes to get certified for to be a certified grower, so you have a better chance of getting into a cultivation facility.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that is all the time we have. I kept looking at the time
I
know we're gonna go over time. So sorry guys. All right, so let everyone know where they can find you and hear about your podcast.
All right, so you can start off, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Canna_babe394. That's CANNA_BABE394. Reach out to me if you have any cannabis questions. I love talking about weed. Weed is life. And then also, the podcast is going to drop on Anchor, on the C.HR website, YouTube, anywhere you can get your podcasts. Please listen in. I'm going to have some really cool people that we can just sit down and smoke with and have these conversations.
Yeah. And then we're also on the CHRservice.org. We're going to have a forum page. So if we want to have conversations about the podcast and like more detail, you can go there to have conversations about it and learn more.
Please come talk to us.
So thank you so much for watching C.HR. I want to give a shout out to the Association of Black Business and Professionals. It is an organization where Black professionals are able to come together and share resources, to network, and just help each other grow. So thank you so much for watching. Bye.